We're going to generate an n8n workflow entirely using prompting that calls the KIE.ai Music API to create two Suno styles track from lyric style prompt and pause until the job is finished and then downloads and saves the MP3 files to a folder you configure. Suno is an AI powered music generation platform that creates complete songs from text prompts. At high level, it works like this. You describe what you want, lyrics, mood, genre, and style, and Suno uses artificial intelligence to generate a full track, including vocals, instruments, and structure. Suno doesn't provide direct API access, so we need to connect its capabilities through third-party providers, such as KIE.ai in our case. So KIE.ai is a platform that gives developers access to multiple AI tools, including music generation, through a single API. So on this page, you select text to music, Suno, and you can try the API. 2 months ago, I created a web-based Suno Music Studio. The project demonstrates a web-based AI music studio powered by Suno and integrated via the KIE.ai API. Users can generate instrumental or vocal tracks using simple or custom modes, controlling parameters like style weight, wildness, and audio weight. Tracks can include duet, hard rock, metal, piano, meditation, or bilingual reggae with multiple variations generated per request. So the project does more, such as extending track, adding vocals, and generating covers, but it will only be concentrating on track generation. So KI.ai generates two tracks per request, and the costs listed is $0.006 is for the entire request, meaning both tracks together cost 6 cents. So clicking run with API takes you to the Generate Music API interface. If you look at the API documentation here, you will see that it calls the generate endpoint with specific parameters. So the prompt is basically what you tell the AI you want, like make a calm and relaxing piano track. So the custom mode is like saying follow my instructions closely and get creative within my guidelines. When you set instrumental to true, you are saying no singing, only instruments. The model specifies which version of the AI brain to use. Some are more experimental, some are polished. The callback URL tells the AI where to send the message when the track is ready. When the track is ready. The style determines the genre or vibe, like classical or jazz, and the title names your track. Negative tags are things you don't want included, like heavy metal or loud drums. Vocal gender only matters if there are vocals letting you pick male or female. Then there are sliders style weights, like style weight, wiredness constraint, and audio weight, which control how closely it follows your style, how experimental it can be, and how much sound quality matters. And finally, the personal ID and personal model give the AI personality or mood to guide the music. This project is entirely made with prompting. In the project, if I go to API generate route, so you can see that we call the generate endpoint with the properties payload we discussed. We also call get callback URL, which provides the URL to receive updates when the music generation task is complete. Note that called API Suno callback. The handler sends that as the response to whoever called the endpoint. In this case, KIE's server posting to your callback URL. By default, the response is HTTP 200 OK with the JSON body. The reason is that we use polling to check when the tracks are ready. There is another endpoint, it's a record info. So we can use to retrieve detailed information about the music generation task. So in generate form, we call API generate to generate the music. Then we start polling. Then we start polling at 8-second intervals using the use status hook, use status polling hook. When the tracks are ready, we save them. So in the GitHub project, I also included this prompts folder where you can see the generate music properties. So the prompt and other properties were generated with the help of either Gemini or ChatGPT. I also described lyrics and musical tags like intro, spoken verse 1, set the style, and chose the vocal gender as male. However, this is not guaranteed as the AI may decide to include the female vocal depending on the musical tags. When I started thinking about generating the n8n workflow, I wondered if I could run and test it locally on my machine. And I saw that n8n could be installed via npm. I opened a new folder and asked Cursor to generate the project, including installing n8n from npm. Once I ran it locally and created the workflow, I realized that I can import a workflow from file in JSON format. Then, in the cursor, I pointed to the folder where my Suno project is located and asked the AI to consider only the music generation case. The first time it generated FM analytic blocks with errors. Then I went into more detail, asking about the music record info, the location of the generated tracks, and also the KIE.ai gave it from the environment file, noting that KIE.ai generates 2 tracks per request, etc. I also specified that it should take all the information from the redemption road txt file. And then it generated the prompts folder and copied it automatically. This time the generation was much better, and after a few prompts I got the result I have now. In your case, since you don't have a project, here is what you should do. Just point the to the KIE.ai API pages and generate track information just like I did using Gemini or ChatGPT. The AI will consider your prompts and the APIs and will generate an n8n workflow. Actually, I also generated this project code itself this way. When generating the project, I instructed Cursor to look into those APIs and related information. You should do the same to generate your n8n workflow, just like I did when generating the project. So Cursor generated the JSON file under the workflows folder, created environment file for the KIE.ai key and other properties. Let's import uh, let's import the JSON file into n8n workflow. So the first node is a manual trigger which allows us to start the workflow manually. Then prompt properties. This node connects your environment input folder with a fully defined track, including prompts, style parameters, and passes that data to the next node, where it's transformed into KIE API request. The build KIE body. So it's the second code node and reads whatever first node put on the wire. Input first JSON and turns it into two things. This is the KIE body that I just showed it. So the JSON payload shape the KIE generate API expects prompts, title, style, negative tags, model, vocal gender, plus fixed flags that custom mode, instrumental and placeholder. So if style weight, wiredness constraint, and order weight are numbers on the input, they get added to the KIE body. Otherwise, they are skipped. Output dir plus title slug. So it requires output dir from the previous step, or it throws. So it normalizes slashes again. It builds title slug from the title by replacing non-alphanumeric runs with hyphens and trimming edges, handy for save file names later. Post generate KIE.ai. So the post generate KIE.ai is an HTTP request node that starts music generation on KIE.ai's API. So what it does, it makes post requests. So headers authorization bearer where the key comes from, environment KIE.ai key, and content type is application JSON. And the body, it's a KIE body object from the previous node sent as JSON. So it's the step that actually calls the API with the prompt, style, title, model, flags, etc. No authentication method is selected in the node UI. Instead, the bearer token is set manually in headers. So the response typically including task ID and status. You can see that it returns status and task ID. Save task ID. So what it does, it reads the HTTP response from the previous step as input for JSON and pulls task ID from all data task ID. Fails fast if there is no task ID, usually means the post didn't succeed, the response shape changed, or out body was wrong. It pulls context from earlier node with who built KIE body, first JSON, who recover output div and title slug. So in short, it extracts the task ID from the KIE's response and reattach the folder slug from step 2. Poll status. Poll status is an HTTP get request that that expects task ID, which comes from for save task ID first JSON task ID. So again, the header's authorization bearer that that it comes from environment KIE.API key, and the response is parsed as JSON. So it it pulls KIE for the current task status results until something downstream decides it's finished. So you can see it here that it takes task ID, and here is the response. Fix done. So this is a code node that interprets KIE's status response. So it uses item data if present, else the whole item, reads status from multiple possible fields. It collects tracks from different possible keys and normalizes to an array. So if status is one of the known error values, it throws and stops the workflow. So completed logic is like is done or is done string. It's boolean and string flags, such as tracks, normalized track list, and it reattaches task ID, output dir, and title slug from step 4. So it normalizes API responses, handles errors, determines completion, and preserves required metadata. If finished, if finished is an if node. So condition is like JSON is downstring. Is it true? It's true branch. generation is done. And a false branch is still running, loop back after waiting. Now the connections. So if finished, that 9 build to download items is executed. Otherwise, 8 seconds. Wait, wait 8 seconds. 8 seconds pauses the workflow for 8 seconds. It prevents excessive API calls and loops back to polling. 9 build to download items. Set transform completed tracks into up to 2 download items. So it reads output dir, title slash, and tracks, extracts up to audio URL values, and they build a file path like output dir, title slash, track 1 mp3. It throws in no valid audio URLs and returns an array of download items. When download mp3, it's an HTTP request to JSON URL, and response format is file binary stored as data. It downloads mp3 content. n8n save mp3 to disk. Uses the file write node. So file name is JSON full path, data property name equal data. Saves each mp3 file to disk using the generated file name format. You may notice that environment file we have a setting called n8n block env access in node, and is set to false by default. If you go to the end-to-end documentation, you will see that it explains where the users are allowed to access environment variables in expressions and the code node when set to false or node when set to true. So in the environment file, I already changed it to true. So now I'm restarting the server and running the workflow. You see, we just received an error cannot assign to read only property name of the object. Error access to environment variable environment was denied. Set n8n block and access in node back to false, and also added n8n restrict file access to property to allow saving generated tracks in the project folder, and restarted the server. So n8n restrict file access to property. When it's running, you will see that it goes through the loop multiple times at 8-second intervals unless two tracks are ready. So the tracks have been successfully generated in the project folder and are ready to be played. Let's play the generated tracks. Each time you generate a track, the result can differ because AI doesn't replay one stored song. It samples new possibilities each time.
Yeah, greetings in the name of the Most High. A través de valle, alamos la luz. Levántate. Oh, 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 yeah. Sunrise in the morning, I see the shadows start to run. Another day of living beneath the golden island sun. The concrete is burning, but my spirit is feeling cool. I'm walking with the wisdom. I'm nobody's plaything or fool. Yeah. Siembro la semilla en un suelo seco y cruel. In the season of dry. Veo niños jugando bajo el cielo de clavel. No quiero riqueza, no quiero plata ni oro. sorrow.